"Mr. Nolan Hayes, your driver's waiting downstairs," the assistant said, popping her head into the sleek glass office. "You've got the gala in 40 minutes. Nolan didn't even look up. Cancel it." "But I said cancel it." His tone was clipped final. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and turned his attention back to the monitor in front of him, where the nanny cam showed his 4-year-old son curled up on the couch, cheeks tear-stained, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Nolan pushed his chair back and stood abruptly. "Tell Renata I'll be home in 20. Renata Clark, the nanny he'd hired only 6 weeks ago, had been a last-minute replacement after his previous one quit. She was supposed to be temporary, just until he found someone more experienced. But now, watching her gently rub Elijah's back, whispering something that made the boy finally stop crying, Nolan felt something twist in his chest. He hadn't seen Elijah smile like that in weeks. Rain pelted the city as Nolan stepped out of the black SUV and jogged up the townhouse steps. The door opened before he even reached for the handle. Renata stood there in jeans and a worn hoodie, her red curls pulled into a messy bun, holding a mug of tea. "Oh. You're home early," she said, looking surprised. "Elijah okay?" Nolan asked, stepping inside, the warmth of the house hitting him as he peeled off his coat. "He had a nightmare, but he's asleep now." Nolan paused. "You stayed longer than I asked." "You didn't have to. I didn't want to leave him like that." He looked at her closely. Her eyes were tired but kind. Honest. She wasn't like the others he'd hired, no fake smiles, no tiptoeing around him because of his last name. Just Renata, who made dinosaur pancakes and read bedtime stories in silly voices like she actually cared. He didn't realize he was staring until she shifted awkwardly. "I should go," she murmured, brushing past him. "Wait." The word came out before he could stop it. "Can you stay a little longer?" Her brows lifted. "You need something?" "No, He frowned. "I don't want to be alone in this house tonight." Renata hesitated. "Nolan, this isn't part of the job." "I know," he exhaled. "Just sit with me for a little while." Something in his voice must have struck her because she nodded. They sat on opposite ends of the giant sectional in the living room. The fire crackled. The silence stretched. "You don't talk much," she said finally. "I'm a single father running a global company," he said dryly. "Talking isn't at the top of my list." She gave a soft laugh. "You might try it sometime. You're not as scary as you look." He raised a brow. "Scary? You've got that whole brooding billionaire thing going on." He looked over at her. "And you've got that whole nanny who says exactly what she's thinking thing." She shrugged, sipping her tea. "I've dealt with worse than you." His lips twitched. There was something about her, something grounded, real. She didn't flinch under pressure, didn't treat him like a paycheck, and she was good with Elijah, better than anyone had been since his mom walked out a year ago. "Why'd you take the job?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "What? You said you're only here for a few months." "Why?" Renata looked down at her mug. "I needed a break from my life, some space. This job came up and it felt like a good reset." He studied her. There was more to it, he could tell. But before he could press, a soft cry echoed from upstairs. "I'll get him," Renata said, already moving. Nolan stayed frozen, listening as her footsteps faded. A minute later, Elijah's giggle floated down the stairs, and just like that, the tightness in his chest eased. The next morning, Nolan stepped into the kitchen to find Renata flipping pancakes, Elijah perched on the island with batter on his nose. "You didn't have to stay overnight," Nolan said. "I didn't want to go out in the rain," she replied, not looking up. Elijah beamed. "Miss Renata made me dinosaur pancakes." Nolan stared at them. "You do realize I pay for a gourmet chef?" "Yeah, well," she handed him a plate. "Try these." He did. And damn it, they were better than any 5-star brunch he'd had in the last year. "You're dangerous," he muttered. She grinned. "Only if you're scared of carbs." That night, Nolan called her again. "Can you stay late? Is Elijah okay?" "He's fine. I'd like you here." She didn't answer right away. "All right." After that, it became a routine, late-night cocoa, quiet talks by the fireplace. Pancakes in the morning. Days turned into weeks. And somewhere along the way, Nolan stopped thinking of her as the nanny. He started noticing the little things, how her laugh made Elijah light up, how she always remembered to bring his favorite juice box on park days, how she challenged Nolan when no one else dared. And then one night, it happened. They were sitting on the patio, Elijah already asleep, the city glowing behind them. Renata had her feet curled under her, a blanket around her shoulders. "I got offered another job," she said quietly, "out in Boston, a full-time teaching position." His stomach dropped. "Oh," he said. "It's a good opportunity." "But you'd leave," he said, his voice tighter than he meant. She looked at him. "It was never supposed to be permanent, you knew that." Nolan stood abruptly. "Right, of course, you should take it." Renata looked away. He walked back into the house, heart pounding, jaw tight. He couldn't breathe. She was leaving. And for the first time in years, he realized he didn't want to be alone anymore. He didn't just want her to stay. He needed her to. The elevator doors glided open to the penthouse, and Renata stepped out slowly, her coat damp from the evening drizzle. She hadn't expected to be called in on her night off, but Nolan had sounded different on the phone, tired, distracted, and unusually unsure. She found him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a tumbler in his hand, city lights casting fractured reflections across the glass. He didn't turn when she entered. "Elijah's already asleep," he said quietly. "You don't need to check on him." She set her bag down on the console table by the entrance. "Then why am I here?" He finally looked at her. His jaw was tight, but his eyes, there was something in them she hadn't seen before. Regret, maybe, or fear. "I need your opinion on something." She blinked. "You called me here for advice?" I didn't know who else to ask. She walked closer slowly. "Okay, what is it?" He handed her a thin folder from the coffee table. Inside were glossy mock-ups and a typed proposal. It took her a moment to register the contents. "You're building a children's museum?" she asked, scanning the pages. "I funded it last year. It's almost finished, but they want to name it after Elijah." She glanced up, surprised. "I didn't say yes," he added quickly. "People would know about him, about me. I've kept our lives private for a reason." Renata sat down on the edge of the sofa, the folder still open in her lap. "You're asking if it's worth putting his name on the building?" He nodded once. "Are you afraid of the attention? Or the responsibility that comes with it?" "I'm afraid of making the wrong choice for him," he said, his voice low. "He didn't ask to be born into this." She closed the folder gently. "Then ask yourself what message you want to leave behind. What story you want to tell him when he's old enough to understand." He studied her for a long beat, then poured the rest of his drink into the sink. "You always do that," he said. "Do what? Make things clearer, even when I don't want to see them." She stood. "You didn't bring me here just to talk about the museum." "No," he admitted. "Then what is it?" He hesitated, then walked toward her. Not rushed, measured, as if he was still deciding whether to speak. When he stopped, there was barely a foot between them. "You said the job in Boston was a good opportunity," he said. She nodded, cautious. "Would you stay?" he asked, voice quieter now. "If I gave you a better one?" She blinked. "Are you offering me a raise?" "I'm offering you a life here," he said. "More than just a position. Something permanent." Her chest tightened. "Nolan, you don't mean that." "I do. You barely know anything about me outside of this house." "Then tell me something," he said. "Something I don't know yet." Renata swallowed. Her fingers curled around the edge of the folder still in her hand. "I used to teach music," she said finally. "Elementary school. I lost the position after the program was cut. That's why I took this job, not just for the space, for the paycheck." He didn't flinch. "I'd hire you full-time, not just for Elijah. For anything you want to do here." She stepped back, suddenly needing distance. "You don't get to fix things with money." "I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm trying to keep you." The words landed between them, heavier than either expected. She looked away. "I can't be the reason you avoid being alone. You're not. You called me here because you didn't want to sit in this place by yourself. I called you because I feel something when you're here. Because when you walk through that door, this place stops feeling like a museum and starts feeling like a home, her breath caught. I don't want to be another one of your projects, she whispered. You're not. You never were. A long silence followed. The kind that was full of choices neither of them knew how to make yet. I need time, she said softly. He nodded. Take it. She walked past him, picked up her bag, and paused just before the elevator. You should name the museum after him, she said. Let him grow up knowing he has a father who didn't hide him from the world, but gave him a place in it. He watched her go, heart pounding, the echo of her words louder than anything else in the room. That night, Nolan didn't sleep. He wrote a name on the museum contract and signed it at the bottom. Elijah Hayes Children's Discovery Center, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was pretending to be someone else. He felt like a father. Nolan adjusted the cuff of his dress shirt as the elevator descended into the underground garage of his midtown office tower. The board meeting had dragged on longer than usual, but his mind hadn't been in it anyway. Not since the night Renata walked out of his penthouse and left behind more than silence. She left a hollow space where her presence used to live. He hadn't seen her in 4 days. She hadn't quit, hadn't given notice. Just asked for a few days off, and he against every instinct granted it. The elevator doors opened to the low hum of idling engines. His driver stood at attention by the Rolls-Royce, but Nolan passed by without a word and walked toward his second car, a discreet black coupe he hadn't driven in months. He needed to move, to feel something under his control, even if it was just the curve of his hands on a steering wheel. Instead of heading home, he took a detour through the park. Not the one near the townhouse Elijah was with the backup nanny today, but the older one near the river, where the walking paths were uneven and the trees had grown wild and tall. He parked, stepped out, and let the wind cut through his tie. He wasn't used to waiting. In the world he'd built, everything bent to his command, markets, mergers, even mayors. But Renata, she didn't flinch at his power, she didn't ask for favors. She didn't want anything from him except honesty, and that terrified him more than any hostile acquisition. He didn't know how long he stood there watching the water roll past the rocks before his phone buzzed. A soft voice greeted him when he answered. Is this a bad time? His throat tightened. No, I'm at the museum site, Renata said, the one you showed me. I wanted to see it in person. He didn't hesitate. Wait there. By the time Nolan arrived, the sun had dipped low enough to cast golden light across the steel beams and glass panes of the nearly completed building. She stood by the main entrance, hands in the pockets of a light jacket, hair down and catching the breeze. She turned as he approached, her expression unreadable. You drive now, she asked. Only when I need to clear my head. She gestured toward the building behind her. It's beautiful. The design is open and warm, inviting. I wanted it to feel like a place that welcomes imagination. I can see that, she hesitated. I checked the donor wall. You didn't put your name on it. I didn't build it for recognition. She nodded slowly, then glanced toward the playground still under construction. There's a music garden out back, wind chimes, steel drums, xylophones built into the benches. I thought of you when they pitched it. Figured kids should have a place to make noise without being told to stop. Renata smiled faintly, then turned serious. This isn't just a vanity project, is it? No, he said. It was supposed to be a legacy for Elijah. And now, he looked at her, his voice low. Now, I think I'd rather build something with someone who knows how to make it mean something. She stepped closer. You once said I made things clearer for you, but you never asked what I see when I look at you. What do you see? He asked, not daring to move. A man who's scared to ask for what he wants unless he's writing it into a contract. She held his gaze. But you have to say it out loud, Nolan, not just build it around people and hope they understand, he exhaled slowly. I want you to stay, not because Elijah needs you. Not because I can offer you a better position, but because I want to wake up and see you in my kitchen again, hair a mess, lecturing me about the importance of breakfast. I want you to be part of this life, not as my employee. As my partner, her brows lifted, eyes brimming with something he couldn't quite name yet. And where do I fit in your world of boardrooms and billion-dollar investments? Wherever you want to, he said. I'll build it around you. She looked away briefly, the wind catching her hair and lifting it off her shoulders. When she faced him again, her voice was softer. I told myself I wouldn't fall for someone who hides behind power, but you're not hiding anymore, are you? No, he said. Not with you, she stepped in. Then stop holding back. So he did. He reached for her, pulling her into an embrace that felt like exhaling after holding his breath for years. She didn't stiffen. She melted into him, her arms winding around his waist, her cheek against his chest. For a long time neither spoke, then she whispered, "You're going to have to tell Elijah." "I will," he said, "but not yet, not until I know you're really staying." She pulled back just enough to look up at him. "I'm not going anywhere," his heart thudded once, hard and sure. "Then come home with me," he said. "Not just for the night, move in, let's figure this out together." She let out a quiet laugh. "That's not a small ask. I'll clear out closets, hire movers, buy a second toothbrush, whatever it takes." She brushed her fingers down the lapel of his coat. "You really don't take your time with anything, do you?" "Not when I know exactly what I want." Her smile deepened. "Then let's go home." They walked back to the car together, fingers entwined, the city unfolding around them like a promise. Nolan adjusted the strap of the car seat as Elijah babbled about space rockets behind him. The boy's curls bounced with every excited gesture, his small hands gripping his astronaut lunchbox. Renata stood nearby, checking her watch, then looking toward the school steps where parents were filtering in with their children. "You're sure he's okay to start today?" Nolan asked, glancing toward her. "He's more than ready," she replied. "He's been packing that lunchbox for 3 days." Elijah hopped out of the car and rushed toward the entrance gate. Nolan watched him go, that familiar weight settling in his chest, the combination of pride and the ache of letting someone grow. Renata touched his arm. "He'll be fine," he turned to her. "I think I'm the one who needs convincing." They drove back in his coupe, the city just waking up around them. He didn't head to his office. Instead, he took a left turn down a quiet street lined with old brownstones, pulling up in front of a modest red brick building with ivy crawling along the sides. Renata looked at him, puzzled. "What's this?" He stepped out and opened her door. "Come see." Inside, the air smelled faintly of old wood and lavender. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. The space was empty, save for a few upright pianos pushed against the far wall and worn chairs stacked in the corner. She turned slowly, her gaze taking in the room. "It's a music studio," it was, "and it can be again." She blinked at him. "You bought this last week. I had the deed transferred this morning." He reached into his coat and handed her a slim envelope. "It's yours." "Under your name." Her fingers closed around it, but she didn't open it. "Why?" "Because you told me once you lost something important. This is me giving it back to you, not because I think you need a favor, because I believe in what you do." She stared at the envelope in her hands, her voice quiet. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just promise me you'll fill this place with music, with kids, with laughter." She looked up at him, something unspoken building behind her eyes. "I thought you were just a man who ran numbers and built towers. I didn't think you saw people." "I didn't," he said. "Not until you." They stood in the center of the dusty room as the city moved beyond the windows, life rushing by, and in that quiet moment something shifted. Not with grand declarations, but with the stillness of two people who finally understood each other. Back at the townhouse, after picking up Elijah, the three of them settled into a rhythm that didn't feel new. It felt like it had always existed, waiting to be lived. Renata filled the kitchen with the clatter of pans and the hum of melodies. Nolan sat at the island helping Elijah glue cardboard onto a rocket ship model, his sleeves rolled up, tie forgotten. Later that evening, after Elijah was tucked into bed and the lights were dim, Nolan stepped onto the balcony where Renata stood in bare feet, holding a glass of wine. "You know," she said, not turning. I used to think people like you lived above real emotions. Untouchable, he joined her, the night air cool against his skin. And now I know you just buried yours deeper than most. He looked at the city lights stretching beyond them. I kept people out for a reason. It was easier to be efficient than vulnerable. She leaned into him, her shoulder brushing his. You don't have to be either / or, you can be both. He took the glass from her, set it on the table, and turned to face her. I want to build a life with you, Renata, not around you, with you. I'm not asking for perfect, I'm asking for real. She stepped closer, her hand resting over his chest. Then let's make it real. The kiss came without hesitation, not rushed, not tentative, just certain, like two people who had finally arrived at the same place after taking the long way around. Weeks later, the museum opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Elijah stood between them, red bow tie askew, announcing to anyone who would listen that the whole place had his name on it. Press cameras flashed, but Nolan didn't care who captured what. His arm rested around Renata's waist, her hand steady in his. As the crowd dispersed and the sun began to dip behind the skyline, Nolan pulled her aside under the canopy of the outdoor music garden. I never thanked you, he said. For what? For showing me that love doesn't need to be earned with grand gestures. It just needs to be chosen, every day. She smiled, brushing a wind-blown curl from his forehead. Then choose it again tomorrow. I will. And the day after that. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and opened it without preamble. The ring inside was simple. A single diamond, understated but unmistakably beautiful. Her breath hitched. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, he said. But I needed you to know where I stand. She closed the box gently, held it in both palms, and looked up at him with eyes full of quiet certainty. You already have your answer, Nolan. And just like that, everything he'd been holding back broke open: relief, joy, the deep steadiness of knowing he'd finally found home, not in the penthouse, not in the boardroom, but in her. Nolan adjusted the lapel of his navy suit as he paced the corridor outside the event hall. The hum of music and conversation floated through the tall, arched entryway, along with the soft clinking of champagne flutes. Tonight wasn't about business. For once, it wasn't about anything corporate. It was a benefit gala for the museum, the first major event since its opening. And it was the first time Nolan Hayes had ever hosted something that didn't revolve around quarterly projections or investor portfolios. He caught his reflection in the tall mirror across from the velvet benches. He looked different tonight, not because of the tuxedo, but because of what had changed in him. There was a quiet steadiness in his eyes now, something rooted. Elijah's laughter rang out from the playroom just past the coat check, where a small team of vetted childcare staff kept the kids entertained while their parents mingled. Nolan had checked in twice already. The boy was happily building a plastic solar system with magnetic planets and a glow in the dark sun. Stop pacing, came Renata's voice behind him. He turned. She stood in an emerald gown that shimmered with every movement, her hair swept into a soft twist pinned with a delicate gold comb. The sight of her was enough to stop everything inside him. I'm not pacing, he said. You've walked past that mirror 5 times. He stepped toward her. You look breathtaking. Better than dinosaur pajamas, his eyes softened. Incomparable. She touched the edge of his collar. You're nervous? I've never done this before, he said. Not like this, she raised a brow. You've hosted galas since your 20s. Not one that mattered. He offered his arm, and she took it without hesitation. Together, they stepped into the grand hall where guests turned and paused, familiar whispers trailing them. For once, Nolan didn't care who was watching. The evening unfolded with speeches from the museum's educators, testimonials from families, and a surprise showcase where children performed a short musical number in the music garden's amphitheater. Nolan watched as Renata's eyes shimmered when a little girl struck the final note on the steel drum, beaming with pride. Later, As the lights dimmed and the jazz quartet began a slow number, Nolan led her to the center of the polished marble floor. They danced in easy rhythm, surrounded by flickering candlelight and soft laughter. "I always thought lives like yours were rigid," she said. "Suits, structure, schedules to the minute." "They were," he replied. "Everything was efficient. Controlled. And now I'm learning to leave space," he murmured. "For chaos, for color, for you." She leaned into him. "I never expected to find this here. Not in a townhouse with a private elevator and a man who signs billion-dollar deals before breakfast. I never expected to want anything more than those deals," he said. "But then a woman walked into my life and made pancakes better than my chef, taught my son how to laugh again, and looked me in the eye like I was just a man, not a headline." Her hand slid from his shoulder to his heart. "Maybe because that's all I ever saw you as." He kissed her then, slow and certain, in front of everyone. The room fell quiet for a beat, and then the music swelled again, the world resuming as if it had only paused to let them find their beginning. A few weeks later, the townhouse was different. The halls no longer echoed, the kitchen was never quiet, and Elijah's drawings were framed across the stairwell wall. Renata's studio opened downtown, and within days, her first class was full. She taught 3 days a week and spent the rest of the time at home, planning lessons, reading bedtime stories, and helping Elijah build cardboard cities in the living room. One morning, Nolan made pancakes. They were slightly burnt on one side, but Renata didn't say anything, just smiled as she poured orange juice and watched him fumble with the spatula. "I booked something," he said, flipping the last one onto a plate. She looked up from her seat at the island. "What kind of something?" "A weekend. Villa in Tuscany, just us." She blinked. "You're taking time off." "I've already cleared it. I even delegated the Monday meeting." She studied him. "Are you feeling all right?" "Perfect," he said, setting down the plate in front of her. "Elijah will be with my sister. She's been practically begging to babysit." "Wait, your sister?" "She flew in yesterday. They're at the aquarium right now." Renata's eyes widened. "You planned this?" He leaned across the counter. "I've been planning it for weeks." "Why?" "Because I wanted to do something for you. Not a donation, not a building, just a trip for us to breathe." She stood, walked around the island, and looped her arms around his neck. "You didn't have to take me to Italy for that." "No," he said, "but I wanted to give you something beautiful. Because that's what you gave me." Their kiss was slow, morning sweet, and full of promises already kept. That evening, just before their flight, Nolan pulled a small velvet box from the drawer in the bedroom. He turned it in his hand once, then tucked it into his jacket pocket. He didn't plan to propose under the Tuscan sun with champagne and violins, though he could have. He'd do it when the moment was quiet. Maybe while they sat on a balcony overlooking the hills, or during a walk through a vineyard when she reached for his hand without thinking. Because their story wasn't about grand performances anymore. It was about the spaces in between, the ones they filled with laughter, music, and the kind of enduring love that didn't have to be explained. And as the plane lifted into the sky, with Renata curled beside him and her hand resting warm over his heart, Nolan Hayes closed his eyes and knew with complete certainty he had everything he'd ever wanted, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid to keep it.